My name is Eduard Angeli. I was born 1942 while the World War II in Vienna. My name is Italian because my great-grandparents came from Trentino while the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was.
Eduard Angeli paints Venice a great deal. The majority of his production right now depicts Venice, and I would claim Venezia minore, minor Venice, the Venice not of the palaces and the noblemen, but of the Venice of the ordinary folk.
I'm not a plein air painter. I'm not working out in the street. I'm just taking photos from my motifs, and then in the atelier I finish it. I find it much more poetic to paint the aura of a house where people lived in. You don't know, will the people come or did they already left?
I've associated it with symbolism which is not with small s, simply a treatment of art in a symbolic manner, but specifically the late 19th century literary and artistic movement in Europe, which took landscape, the landscape of the Impressionists, for example, and introduced ideas into it. And landscape artists in the 19th century quickly became tired of simply painting what they saw, light, color, landscape, and so forth, and decided that really what they wanted to inject into the image is their temperament, their ideas, their moods, their emotions, to pull something out of the landscape which reflected their own inner spiritual life. Eduard Angeli, as a painter of Venice, chose not to place himself in the grand tradition of the Vedotisti, beginning, if you like, with Carpaccio and Gentile Bellini in their scenes for the Scuole of Venice. But let's ignore at this point Calevaris, Bellotto, Canaletto, even Caffi, the great 19th century painter of Venice. His vision of Venice is completely different, and I would argue that it is fueled by symbolist ideas in his head of how to render mood and notions that are not visible, the invisible dimensions of Venice, reflecting the melancholy that pervades post-imperial cities.
Vienna was also the capital of a big empire. Also, Venice was a capital of a big empire, and also Istanbul. The great Turkish writer Orhan Pamuk also wrote about this special feeling in Istanbul, which is called hüzün. That means melancholy. And why comes this melancholy? Because all these people in these three cities I named have still, after generations, the feeling of a big loss. The same thing you feel in Venice, and I am attracted by these.
In 2019, the flood of Venice in November, a very severe flood, caused Angeli to leave Venice. He was distressed, disappointed by the calamity of the destruction of his studio.
I lost a lot of my work, also all my material, and the house was not anymore to live in. So I left after 20 years Venice and thought, that's it, 20 years is enough. But after the Corona, I came back to Venice and I was again touched so much by the city that I had to find another atelier. I can't live without Venice. I realized this. Painting is a very silent profession. You are always alone, and I love to be alone in the studio, but not always, of course, but in the studio, and there has to be absolutely silence. You are in a dialogue with the canvas and yourself. And sometimes the canvas starts to speak to you. And then you have to listen very carefully, because sometimes the canvas tells you something which you didn't know before. Something comes out which you didn't expect before, but it was there. And that's a big mysterious. Painting has always to be a little bit mysterious. Why? We don't know. Thanks God we don't know. That's the way how people are touched by paintings, because they feel there's something more.
Il nostro Angeli addirittura, da un certo punto di vista, rifiuta la città, puntualizza delle situazioni e dà dei messaggi, in qualche modo, non voglio usare la solita parola provocatori, ma suggerisce delle situazioni e non vuole neppure condizionare il visitatore o lo spettatore